You're lucky again, another lesson in the New Testament is Fake series. And it is April 22nd, 2017. I thank the Most High for leading me in this truth. I've had so much communication with people who are letting me know their search for truth, that they've just been searching to find the Creator for so long, and now they've finally found Torah, and it's been a struggle just breaking away from this Jesus deception. Having left the Christian church, they came over to understanding that we're the Church of Israel, and we're into this same Messiah belief, because normally that's what you hear when you come in. But now they realize, no, it's just Torah. The answer is in Torah. It doesn't have anything to do with New Testament. So they're dropping off. And so I thank the Most High for those who have been led this way by the teachings of so many of us who are doing these teachings to expose this deception through Jesus, the so-called Messiah. He is not my Messiah, and he never will be. And he's going to be destroyed in the end. The knowledge of him is going to be destroyed. And what I find is that more and more of the returning Israelites are dropping off of this Jesus. You see, the camps ran as the more visible face of this Israelite teaching in these parts. The camps ran heavy and hot on this Jesus belief because they came out of Christianity. That's part of the reason and only part. And they brought this Jesus thinking with them, because when Jesus is riveted into your soul, it's hard to read the same Bible and drop him. And so once you start to teach in a camp and run a camp, and it starts to work for you, you just say, it's Jesus that's blessing me like this, and Jesus is building my camp, and we're opening up another camp elsewhere. And you never stop. But look at what it is saying here in Exodus chapter 20. We know the commandments are there, but I won't read those. I'll pick up from verse 23. Well, let's go verse 22 first. And the Most High said unto Moses, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, Ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. Ye shall, and by the way, how did they see it? Not by seeing a man that looks like he is the father of a son who's going to come in 0 AD or thereabouts. But they saw by the display that the Creator put on that let them know he is real. All right, and if you read probably a couple verses before that, it would say that in verse 18, and all the people saw the thunderings, and the lightnings, and the noise of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. So they could see, they could tell that only the Creator could do that kind of stuff. And still, you would think that if he's going to give some introduction of himself to the people that he's dealing with, then he would have introduced his son as well. This is a big launch for Israel now. This is not no little patriarch just moving from one place to another place trying to find what it is this God wants with me. We've passed that stage now. The Abrahams have passed. The Joseph has gone on. The Jacobs have died already, and so on and so forth. Now he's getting ready to do a big thing in the earth, and he can't introduce his son so you know exactly who you're dealing with. That is me and my son running this thing. Make sure you know him, because he's going to come and talk to you sometimes. Wouldn't this have been the perfect spot here at Sinai with the dropping of the commandments to then introduce the Son? Since, as some of these foolish teachers teach in the Hebrew camps and in the Christian churches, that this so-called Jesus was the angel that walked with them out of Egypt. Since they were already familiar with him, you say, because he walked with them out of Egypt, why isn't he showing up here at Sinai? If he's already been there with them, it shouldn't be a stretch for him to introduce and to say, my angel, I said, would walk with you, but here he is. He's actually my son. I just want to make it clear because I don't want you making any mistake and worshiping any other gods. Instead, what we find is that the main introduction coming out of Egypt to the Creator happens by the Creator himself / the power of Israel, who doesn't talk about no son. But hear what he says in verse 23, Exodus 20 verse 23, Ye shall not make with me gods of silver, neither shall ye make unto you gods of gold. What he's saying right here, to put it in my words, is that you shouldn't worship anything else, anyone else, or give your worship or your heart to any person or thing or creature other than me. He's saying gods of silver and gold because that's what a lot of people did in those times. But if we put it in our vernacular today, we wouldn't necessarily think of it like that. We just read it like that because we're reading the Bible and that's what it says. But you have to put it in our words today, right? Because normally, if you and I are worshiping Jesus like I did from when I was a child, I didn't make a god of gold or silver to represent him. And if I'm worshiping someone else from when I was a child, or some other god, I didn't go and make some statue of them out of gold and silver like they did in the old world. I didn't do it. And you didn't either. So gods of silver and gold is just a way of telling you at the time how people did it. And a thought just hit me. You have to consider this too. From ancient times, there was always a lot of conquest, fighting, war, and gold was a big thing. Let's use the gold here. Just like it is today anyway. The average person, just like they could not afford their own scrolls for different books that they wanted, and let's deal with the Hebrew writings here, they couldn't afford their own scrolls because it was very expensive. And you had to be some type of a ruler or king or dignitary or some scribe to have access to a scroll, let alone to own one. No king or empire is just going to print out scrolls for you if you aren't some kind of scribe or dignitary. And so, if it's that expensive and the average commoner and peasant and so on couldn't have it, how is the average peasant and commoner in a land going to have their own gods of gold in such abundance that it's just common talk, don't make gods of silver and gold? He's talking to them all. So if they couldn't afford these gods of silver and gold because that was very expensive, remember they said Solomon had ships coming over to America to come and look for gold, and the trip would take so long. I think they said that they'd leave from a port called Ezion Geber, someplace on the other side of the world, and they would come all the way over to even America. It was found, Pennsylvania and other such areas, and I learned as well that even the Romans came over with them, and some of the Hamites as well come over with the Israelites all together. And they were found in caves and just probably anywhere else that they could find the gold, right, that they were coming for. So Solomon would send these ships of Israelites with Hamites, and they would come over to America, and they would get gold. But the journey was so long that it would take them about a year to make the journey on the ship. A half a year, like 6 months. And then they would, because the journey was so long, they would just stay a whole year and work the year digging up and mining the gold, and then another 6 months to get back. So it would take them a long time to even get back home. That was the value of gold, that people would go so far just to get gold and stay so long because the journey was so expensive, so costly. But you're going to get the average person back then in ancient time just making all these gods of golds, like having like a few hundred gods of golds and so on. That's why you hear them sometimes making gods out of wood and chipping their own stone gods. Why? Because those were cheaper. You can find stone anywhere, and you can cut down a tree anywhere. But the gods of gold, this is telling you right here, people who are listening to me, that it was the elite from in ancient times, the rulers, the kings, the magi's and so on, who had the money to set up all these religions to trick people. They were the ones who could afford all these gold gods, to afford all these gold gods to be built, to erect everywhere and have them all over the place. And then the common people would have to come and bring their bread to these priests and kings to give them as offerings to these gods of gold that they made, which made the people, the rulers, the priests and so on, even more rich from all the little paycheck to half a paycheck offerings that the people in the communities were bringing to offer. And when they get more rich like that, then they can make even more gold gods and look splendid all over their empire, and with their mansion being big, while you're trying to put up enough leaves to stop the rain from falling on you and your children, falling through the roof, rain wetting you and all that kind of stuff, and you're sleeping on the dirt. All right, and so this is what we're dealing with. It was the ancient rulers and mighty people that made these gods to trick the people to worship these gods. And so we find that fame is the game. The more famous you are, like a ruler or some dignitary, you can trick the people Because when you are that famous, you can make people believe anything. You can build anything and let them believe it and tell them this is your God, this is what you should worship, this is what's actually bringing us to power. And they'll convince you, like, how did you think we rose to power in the first place? How did you think we conquered this other land over there and that other land, which is going to make our empire grow so that you live in a bigger place, a bigger empire, like people cared about that. People just wanted to live. Let me do my agriculture, my farming, I can feed my children. But these kings and priests and so on are telling you back then, these are the gods, these are the gold statues here that we worship, that gave us the power to conquer this other land and that other land and so on. And now, because they have blessed us like this, we want to bless them in return and make a bigger statue for them, a bigger statue of them. And so give us your supplies, your whatever. Give us your crop and all that you have, and bring us your animals and whatever. And when they get all those gifts, they sell them back to the people and sell them to other, do trades with them and so on, sell them to other neighboring cities and so on. And they get more rich from that, and then they get more powerful. They make up the bigger gods and erect them in the cities and everywhere in the countrysides and everywhere. And that's how they build up the religion. And so you grow to worshiping that. So the fame of these kings, these priests, these leaders, these wise men, these shamans, and so on, is what let them establish the religion so much. So when the Most High is saying here, don't make all these things, he's telling you, don't make anything that is so popular with all the people around and all these other people who are telling you to do all this stuff. Because I'm not into that. I'm not made of gold myself. Don't make it. In other words, anything that you can identify with other people that you're going to make or that's conceptualized in someone's mind, don't be involved with it. I am your power. You worship me, you serve me only. Because everything else is coming from someone else. And since he didn't introduce his son right there at Sinai, he's telling you, I am the only one, like he said so many times in the book of Isaiah. I am your only savior. Don't focus on anything else. Everything else is made up. It's fashioned in men's minds as a thought, and then they do it with their hands and they build it. Don't have anything to do with this. But as these rulers began to grow great, and their fame spread all over the land and into other areas, they really set up their religion just like in a major kind of way. These people learned from even more ancient people before them, who were more, that when you hear of these real ancient gurus and these wise men, they were called wise men, men of wisdom. They started out, let me tell you how this thing started out. They didn't start out being famous. They started out wanting to question life. What am I? Who am I? Where did I come from? Where did people come from? Because they didn't know about Torah. They didn't care about following the instructions of the Most High. Because they did not want to follow the people the Most High was dealing with at the start. And so they were there just meditating. They go up in some hillside or on some mountaintop, lay on a big stone or lay in the dirt, in the grass or something, start meditating, and they'd watch the sun and the moon and the stars at night, and they'd be gone for days, and then they come back down to the people with all kinds of bright ideas. Because you and I very well know that if you just even open your Bible or read any book or watch a TV, all kinds of thoughts come to you. How do people make inventions? Thoughts come to them. So you're telling me thoughts don't come to people about religious things? Of course. So they come back down from off the mountain and they tell you all this thing about the Creator, although they're not talking about the real Creator because they never learned anything about Torah. They're talking about a Creator as some kind of eternal spirit, they call it, or something that just comes to their mind. They're telling you all kinds of stories that came to their mind while they were thinking. And they tell you that is God. And eventually they tell you you are God and so on. And they sound, wow, you didn't know that yesterday when you were down here with us. And we don't know it either down here. So if you're coming back with this information, you must have more information than us. So you are wise. So every time he goes back up, he comes back down with some spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual information. He becomes a wise man. Now, people naturally want something that's quote unquote religious because there's a part of us that longs for the supernatural or the spiritual. And it gets hungry without without being fed. So every time he comes down, he feeds them. They love him. They believe everything he says. They start to trust in him. They're wondering, when is he coming back down from the mountain? They don't want him to starve up there, so they would pack him with some food to go up there. All of a sudden now, he doesn't need to worry about work now. So he doesn't come back down in a couple of days anymore because he has to try to find some way to work. He stays up there longer. They're wondering, where is he? So they go up and look for him, bring some food. We didn't want you to starve. Then he starts telling them stuff. And while they're bringing him food, because they don't want him to starve, they realize they have problems with this, that, and whatever. Their children sick. There's something wrong with the foot swelling. They ask him about the foot. My child's foot is swelling. Something bit him. And he starts now, because he's been doing a lot of meditation for years and years and years, and he knows all kinds of stuff in nature about the plants and whatever. He says, I know what you need. This plant right here, over there, I'll pick this for you. He comes back and he rubs it on it, and a couple of days the foot gets better. Wow, they go back to him for the next sickness. Next thing you know, these ancient gurus and shamans and so on become the healers in their community. So right away, he becomes famous as a religious healer. You are not getting rid of this guy. And when even a king comes and captures the people there and takes over that land or that city, they're not going to kill him too quickly, because he can work magic. He can do healing. The gods are with him. So he gets famous among them as well, because he gets put into some religious harem, if I can say it. And the king relies on him. Everybody's relying on him. Also, his fame grows even more, to the point where later he'll become some kind of an emperor or king as well, and priest and so on, because he has all this knowledge up there. And every time people get stressed out with life, they go up, climb up to the mountain to go see the wise old man on top of the mountain folding his legs. And they go and tell him about their problems, and they can't make ends meet, and things are hard and whatever, and oh, life is stressful. And because he is pulled away from society so much, and he's got lots of time to do all kinds of thinking, he looks up at the stars, in the sky and the clouds, trying to think how he should respond to them. And they think that he's connecting with some spirit up there that's telling him the answer. And then he tells them back now, from all his years of thinking up there in the away from society in the mountains, he tells them some wise, smart answer. And they feel relieved in their heart. They feel so relieved, so refreshed. You know how it is when you talk to people and they tell you something and it sounds, wow, okay, maybe I'll try that. So they go away, they're feeling refreshed, and they learn to trust in this man as a spiritual man, a wise man. He becomes their spiritual leader, like their guru, their leader, their pastor, their shaman, their whatever you want to call them, right? That's how he becomes. He becomes famous. Some of these men then go on in time to become some emperor or king, like I said before, or just a priest. But they become famous. They become very famous. That's how this thing goes, right? So fame is the game. So these peaceful wise men, that's how they do it from ancient times. And then they end up ruling the world as time went on, and they became more greedy, because they want more and more and more. Because when they realize some other king is going to come and take over the land, they don't want to be there when the king is coming. So they're going to get more rich off you from telling you all kinds of stuff. So you give them more food, more money, more of your crops, more of your animals, whatever. So they can take off and go and build their house someplace else. So when the next king and army is coming to ransack the place, they're not even there. They move to someplace else. Or they tell you all kinds of stuff, get all your money and get rich like that. When they're that rich and they got their little mansion, a king comes in, they say, wow, who lives right here? They kill all the other people, as much of them as they want. But when they see all these rich people, these mighty, strong people, they're like, how did you become that rich? Oh, you're a wise man. You're one of those. Oh, we want you. We keep him alive. So they take over the land, but they keep him alive. And they rely on him for their needs as well. And they rebuild that society now by bringing in their other new people and take over the land. And the wise man gets rich. He becomes some confidant of the king and so on. You see? And so fame is the game. So when you look now at these Hebrew camps and these Christian churches and so on, what you're dealing with is just a case where people are telling you the things that you want to hear, because people will do better, it seems, for the moment, with spiritual information that gels with them. And if it's different from what they've always heard, they get kind of nervous, like a plane going through turbulence about to crash or something. But when you tell them what they've always heard, they feel comfortable, smooth and nice, and yeah, you're with it. So they stay in your camp or your church. And you go on, and then you build and you open up the next church, the next daughter church or the next camp, and so on. And people just think that, yeah. Why? Because you're famous, so they stay with you. And people like when people are building and doing stuff, so they stay with you. And so what we've done is to see that fame attracts people. And so these people leading these camps, they know fame is the game. They know the scriptures better than I do, and they can see these certain things. And I've talked with some of these people who are running these camps. Believe me, I have. And they back off of us at a certain point. And now they're pushing through, trying to find out this and that, what I believe. They're smart. They think I'm an idiot. Right? Now I got more growth to do to become smarter in life. So I make some mistakes, but I catch on quick enough. And I see what they're doing, right? And so they just back off at a certain point. But through my studies, I've seen all this kind of stuff in the scriptures and through history that shows where this Jesus came from. And they've come across this stuff as well too. But fame is the game, so they're not going to tell you where Jesus originally came from, because he was there before 0 AD. He was there before Israel became a nation. I still got that lesson to do. But he hid under different names. By not hiding himself, but the people who created him hid him, because he is not even real. The Romans simply took it on and made a bigger story out of it for that time of the Romans. And so, since fame is the game, they know fame is the game, they're not going to stop, because they're going to lose your support, they're going to lose your money, they're going to lose all kinds of stuff. So they continue, because fame is the game, like the ancients who became famous sitting up on the mountaintop. Fame is the game, people. As soon as somebody... Look, if a camp grows big, they're not going to just stop so easily. Just like the Christian church, when they grow big and they get like 1 million people or a few thousand, they're not going to just stop for you. Fuck your truth from the Bible. Fame is the game, and we're going to do this and continue this and open the next church or open the next camp. So they fuck you with the fame and keep telling you the lie, even though Torah does not support it and history does not support it. A matter of fact, just because a camp is teaching certain things, don't you know when you read history things that these camp leaders know? That Israelites started some of the religions that are on the earth that has nothing to do with Torah. Israelites did that. And Israelites were running a lot of Christian churches, even in the so-called Dark Ages. In Africa and in Europe and so on. Israelites were doing that. Now, does it mean it was right because they were running a Christian church until the Europeans came and took them over? Does it mean it was right? No. But they were still doing it. Fame is the game, people. Keep that in mind. When they're famous, they attract more people, because when you are that famous, look at the Hollywood stars and these new, what do you call these new TV shows, the reality TV shows, right? It's just what's catchy. It's famous. It's the in thing right now. So anytime someone becomes famous teaching the Bible, for example, it works like fame in any other area in life. As long as people are attracted, you are going to be drawn to them. You have to have the smartness of mind and the wisdom and the desire to search and check things out and to go by what you find in Torah plus real history and line it up. And verse again from Exodus chapter 20 and verse 23, ye shall not make with me gods of silver, neither shall ye make unto you gods of gold. In other words, the popular people, the ones that got known, the ancients that became rich and wealthy and sought after, the wise men, the priests and the kings, they had the money to make these gods of gold. Because when you were giving them your stuff, your little crops and so on, and your little withered up animal that's starving almost as skinny as you and your children, they still took it, and so they didn't have to work. So they had time to sit down and strategize, what do I do with all these gifts? Then they sell it back to you and sell it to neighboring communities and so on. They got rich from it. Then they could now do expeditions to go and find gold and dig and conquer and get gold and come rich and look rich right in front of your face and set up these gods of gold. You see what I'm saying? When they got famous, it was even easier for them to build whatever they were building. But I think your own New Testament says to you something about what Jesus said about building on a solid foundation. The solid foundation would not be Torah, what the Most High instructed, to the point where even New Testament theology is builded upon Old Testament. Why? Because Old Testament is the true foundation. Old Testament instruction and commandments and Torah is the true foundation. So the New Testament had to build on it because it wanted a real good foundation in order to be able to stand. And the only reason why New Testament has stood the test of time is because it built itself upon a true foundation and just adorned itself with a lot of lies. It might have stood the test of time up until now for 2,000 years or so. It's not going to stand the test of truth anymore because the Most High is raising up people more and more to expose this stuff. All the time I'm finding new people who are teaching against this stuff. This Jesus deception that we're cropping up, we're getting up more and more because the time is coming close for the end of all things the way they are. Until Israel is going to teach the truth. And let me read it for you again here. When Israel is going to be restored and be teaching the truth. Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 2 and 3. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Most High's house shall be established in the top of the mountain. So putting him up on a very high place to show we rule with the Most High. Right? And shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Most High, to the house of the power of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the commandments and the word of the Most High from Jerusalem. Nothing here about any kind of wording that tends to suggest strongly to the mind a Jesus kind of Messiah experience. Nothing. But what is suggested strongly to the mind from all these wordings is that there is an old-fashioned, old-time Torah type teaching. Does that not strike the mind?